And I will tell everybody, I think they get a message when they come in. And then in a couple of minutes, I'll let anybody in. Anyone got any last minute questions? You all happy with my order of speaking? Were you happy with that, Joshua? Just to sort of set us going. Yeah, brilliant. Because I
Yeah,
think
for
it
sure.
works well. It's very strange if the chair introduces everyone, then introduces themselves at the end. So I think it's always best if the chair starts.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Karim, how do you say your full name?
You pronounced my name perfectly well there. My surname is Asfarol.
Asfaro?
Yeah, perfect.
And Elettra Bordenaro, is that right? Thank you.
Right. Well, it's all very exciting waiting for everyone to arrive. Here's Ian, so I'm going to let Ian in just in case you want to have a conversation with Ian. Ian is the chair of the Apple Foundation. He hasn't joined with a microphone. Oh, yes, he has. So it looks like the audience is going to take it to the wire, but since it's 4:30, I'm going to admit everybody and start saying my little introduction piece, if that's okay with everyone. Everybody ready to go?
Thank you.
Excellent. So people are joining.
Looks a bit more promising.
Joshua, you just joined us yourself. Do you want me to let you in again?
Yeah, please. I joined on my laptop so that I could share my slides from that.
Excellent. Okay, so you want to use that? Yes, understood. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
So I should have made you co-host there just to... So do you want to just try share your laptop screen?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that works. That's lovely.
Great.
Great stuff. Welcome, everybody. My name's Andrew Scoons from Engenuity, and I'm the organizer of these city conversations. And while people are joining, I'm going to just quickly do a few sort of administrative, semi-administrative things to get us going. The first is to say that we're recording. You should have been told that when you joined, but just to repeat that, so you know that we hope you'll be contributing to the conversation, and in doing so, I'm going to encourage you to both while we're having this conversation and when it comes to making your contribution, that you can switch on your camera and switch on your camera while the conversation is going. It gives us a feel of who the audience is out there, and it makes it a more sort of even-sided conversation. And But in particular, if you do want to make a contribution, please could you put your comments or question in the chat feature of Zoom? And when it comes to the conversational part of the event, we will ask you to unmic and ask your question or make your comment. It is very much a discussion, so it's not a sort of Q&A in its strictest form at all. How we like to run these, and they run very successfully in that way. We would ask you to keep your microphone mute though while the rest of the event is going on, unless you're contributing. But as I say again, it would be great to see you if you wanted to take part and switch your camera on, or at least switch your avatar on. And then finally, I'm going to put in the chat section a copy of the biographies of all the panelists that we're really grateful for their contributions and their taking part this afternoon, so that if you want to get the full, we're going to move quite quickly through the presentations. We don't know, and if you want to get the full background on each of the presenters, I'll put a link to the Hapoel Foundation website where you can get that. And I will also recommend that once you've found the Hapoel Foundation website, if you're new to this series of conversations, there's lots and lots of excellent recordings of previous events, and in a week or so you'll also find a report and recording of this if you want to review and go back and pick up on some of the things that you've heard. So that's all from me. I'm going to pass over to Lorraine Milne and perhaps Ian Maddox of the Hapoel Foundation, who are going to just do a quick background to the Hapoel Foundation and what they're up to.
Thank you, Andrew. And it's a pleasure having you all online today. The Hapoel Foundation is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, and this is a great way to acknowledge that milestone by having these city conversations. The city conversations that we've been running for a number of years, and I think that's one of the areas that we're very proud of sponsoring. And we're working with Andrew Scoons, who was formerly of Ingenuity, who's been carrying on doing this work with us. And we hope, we can continue having these great conversations and enlightenments to the world of the built environment. Thank you so much. I think we can just...
And sorry, I was a bit slow with my microphone there. It's also our pleasure to be joined, to have a contributor from New York, from the Bureau Hapoel New York office. Joshua Spitzig is the lighting lead from that particular office, and he's going to, and I must say he's very, very generously stepped in to chair this event. He wasn't originally going to do that, but so we're super grateful. Joshua, over to you to get us going. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew, and thanks everybody for being here. As Andrew mentioned, I was originally asked to be a panelist, and then things got switched up, so I'm not only the chair, but I have some content to present as well. And then I can ask myself easy questions. So we're here to talk about something that we all live with, but don't always think about, which is how we light our cities at night. And let me get my screen share started. Okay. Can you see the title slide? Great. So streetlights, floodlights, glowing signs, illuminated facades. It's all so familiar that it can feel invisible. But the way we use light at night affects far more than we usually give it credit for. So today we're asking some basic but actually kind of tricky questions. How much light is enough? What kind of light are we using? And who benefits or doesn't from how our cities are lit? These aren't just technical questions, they're design questions, they're justice questions, they're ecological questions, and they're especially relevant right now as cities take on bigger challenges around climate and energy, inclusion, public health, biodiversity. So I'll offer some initial thoughts, and then we'll hear from a brilliant panel, people working at the intersections of environmental policy, inclusive design, cultural theory, and lighting practice. And as Andrew and Lorraine mentioned, this is a conversation, and feel free to jump in with questions in the chat. This conversation isn't meant to settle anything. It's meant to open up a space for new ways of thinking and to hear from people approaching this from different angles. And everyone on the call brings something to it too, whether you're a designer, a planner, an engineer, policymaker, or someone who just exists in a city after dark. You're all part of this. So with that, we're going to talk about a few different aspects of human-made light, how the amount and intensity of outdoor lighting has gone from nearly nothing to way too much, how lighting is connected to social inequality, and how darkness itself can be useful. Hopefully, we can all agree that some amount of outdoor lighting at night is necessary in a modern society. Ancient civilizations had very little human-made light, and the night was almost universally considered dangerous. We could wax poetic about the benefits of waking and sleeping with the sun, or traveling by the light of the moon and living with very little human-made light, the way many of our ancestors did. But realistically, that's not how most of us live or want to live in modern society. Outdoor lighting supports safety, movement, and access. Human-made light lets us spend time outside, socializing, exercising, traveling, relaxing. It supports safety, movement, and access. And it's one of the reasons that our cities can stay vibrant after sunset. So we have a dilemma. Some light is good. It helps us feel safe and connected. But we've now reached lighting levels that are actively harmful for people, for wildlife, and for our sense of place. Data from the last dozen years or so shows that the sky brightness from human-made light is increasing exponentially with an alarming average of 10% each year, meaning it doubles in less than 8 years. And a majority of people that live in Europe and North America cannot see the Milky Way. Here's one way to consider this change. This is Van Gogh's painting Starry Night over the Rhone from 1888. It shows gaslights along the waterfront in Arles, France, and they're reflected in the river under the sky full of stars. The city and the cosmos share the same frame. Of course, this is art. It's not a photo. It's not scientific. And we even know that Ursa Major, the constellation you see in the middle, was behind Van Gogh when this was painted, so he had to turn his canvas to see it. But all that aside, it suggests that the night sky and the stars were still clearly visible at this point, despite gas lamps throughout the city. Gas lights were relatively dim, and because they put out warm light, it had less impact on the sky than modern lights. Contrast that with, here's the same view photographed in the last few years. You can not only see the cool white and the bluish lights with a handful of warm lights, but the stars are just barely visible due to the sky glow from light pollution above the city. It's not just a visual or cultural loss, although it is both of those, but it's also an ecological loss. Birds, bats, insects, fish, turtles, plants, and more all rely on cycles of light and dark. Some species use the stars to navigate during migration, and now they can't. And for people, nighttime lighting affects circadian rhythms, melatonin levels, and it can contribute to sleep and metabolic disorders. So this isn't just about aesthetics. It's about how our bodies and our ecosystems work, and what many of us and many other species can no longer access. So from my perspective, as a lighting designer, this really comes down to how we want people to feel outside at night. We want to feel comfortable and safe when we spend time outside, not like this. But I don't believe that more light or higher light levels is the best way to get there. In fact, that can work against us, like we see here. In my work, I found that what really makes people feel at ease is better quality light. It means more control and lighting that takes into account the overall impact of light on people and non-human species. I found that what duplicate. So what does better actually mean? A useful starting point is the 5 principles of responsible outdoor lighting developed by the IAS and Dark Sky International. These are becoming kind of a baseline for what good lighting design looks like outdoors. I won't go into each one of them here, but together they give us a framework that's simple and adaptable without being prescriptive. But for me, one of the most critical and still underappreciated aspects of outdoor lighting is glare. In outdoor environments, glare doesn't just feel unpleasant, it actively reduces visibility. It can make it harder to see obstacles, read facial expressions, or feel oriented in a space. This pair of images that's been around for a while, but it's a really good, simple illustration of how when there's glare in the camera, which represents a human's eye, you really can't see the person standing at the gate. And it's not until your eye adapts that you can. Controlling light for the benefit of humans is really the goal here. This is a test that we did on a previous job, a park project I worked on. In the image on the left fixture is a standard area light with high performance optics, and the one behind it has a special a Hexcel louver integrated into it to control glare. Now, here's both of them. Both photos are using the same manual exposure settings. So when you turn both lights on, the standard optics put out more even light on the ground, but at the expense of glare in your eyes. The fixtures in your right with the louver put out less light overall, but they're shielded. And so as your eyes adjust, or in this case, as the camera is set to automatic exposure, the image on the right with the shielded fixtures preserves your night vision and lets you see your surroundings. If you look beyond the lifts, you can see the buildings and some of the features on the ground. But the one on the left, it makes your pupil iris down, and it basically limits your night vision. There's a belief that higher quantity of light produces a higher level of safety, but I believe that it's a higher quality of light, better light, leads to a higher perception of safety. And this is not just about efficiency, it's not just about brightness, but thoughtful lighting that supports how people really experience a space. So that's the framing I want to offer, not as an answer, but as a set of questions. We know that outdoor lighting matters. The challenge is how we use it wisely and how we balance all the things that affects safety, visibility, ecology, culture, identity. And those aren't trade-offs we can solve all on our own. They need multiple perspectives, and that's what this panel brings. So with that, I believe, Karim, are you next?
Sure, I'll just share my screen. All right, hope you guys see this just fine. And thanks, Josh. I think you paved the road really nicely into this presentation. So I'm delighted to be with you all today. And as Josh explained, light or artificial light at night has an impact on all of us. All living things on Earth evolve towards the day and night cycle, and we all, all plants, insects, animals, we either have sleep or sleep-like behaviors. So rest is important, and artificial light at night biohacks us to think it's daytime and has implications on all of us. But I'd like to maybe take a bit more step back and take us to a time where night wasn't always our friend, and it was a very hostile environment. And the advent of lighting, when it came into the picture, it really transformed our thinking and really position on this planet. Because we were no longer bound by prescribed by the hours of the day, and it came in with a bundle of qualities that changed everything. It changed the whole game for us. It was offense, defense, social, cooking, nutrition, and just basically sharing stories, having shelter and safety. So it was about allowing us to go see what's behind the next hill, or after that, what's behind that mountain, exploration. So it's very, very hard to now for us to get our heads around what it was back then when lighting came into play. Because when we look at light, we only see a very isolated quality of visibility at night, but it was actually a combination of lots of qualities. And fast forward, bringing us to maybe today or even to the future, what is really, disconcerting is when it comes to the amount of light, sky is the limit, literally. And what does that mean for us? What purpose light will play in the future society? These are important questions that should be asked right now. As lighting professionals, that light being still relevant to social and environmental values becomes a very important part of our well-being. Because when cities get brighter as a whole, we don't tend to recognize it because our visual system is designed to adjust to contrast rather than absolute light levels. So we don't tend to realize how bright our environment gets unless there's a contrasting reference point. The history of the lighting is quite interesting, that the large majority of the history of illumination, light was actually mobile. We brought it to places as we went anywhere, like with us. But literally with the, around, say 17th, 18th century, we see with the advent of gas lighting, we see lighting becoming a kind of permanent part of the street furniture or amenity, if you will. And it didn't come, for the purpose of providing immunity. It came from the aspect of policing the night. So it was authority trying to reinforce safety and security. But what makes it very interesting is that we are at a point now that we've changed from maybe electric to electronic, and now LED is pretty much one of the best light sources that we ever came up with. But it's it's a double-edged sword in terms of, if it's not utilized responsibly, it causes significant damage to the environment. So it brings a serious responsibility to us all, lighting specialists, merchants, communicators, to advocate and reinforce responsible use of LED, because it's a fantastic tool when it's utilized right, and we know the reasons that comes with that innovation. So when you look at this map, it's easy to just give in and say, like, this is this cancer spreading. This is the sky quality, sky brightness quality. Looking at the UK and Ireland. I used to live in North London. Now I'm over here in Gorey, just south of Dublin. And you can see that there's a narrative of, like, wherever there's people, there's bound to be light, and wherever there's big development, there's even more light. So this is also, this picture shows you a lot about to cherish in terms of what values that we have to protect. Looking at Wales or north of England or west coast of Ireland, there is still a lot to protect. So it's very important. This is the story of how you, every little helps, how you show any improvement, any reduction across the board in these big cities, but also how do you protect the existing infrastructure and reserve. And textbook definition of like light traveling upwards and cool color temperatures tend to, meet with like dust or humidity, clouds that manifests itself in this visual form that we call sky glow, because light is invisible until it hits the surface. And that's due to something that's called Rayleigh scattering effect, that the atmosphere favors scattering short wavelength further. And there are really simple ways to mitigate this. Just use warm color temperatures, shield it down, channel it where it's needed, eliminate glare, as Josh was saying, putting it really nicely with their example, and switch it off when you don't need it. And at no point in our history had we been this equipped to tackle light pollution. Even though it started as maybe astronomy movement, it is now, offering a refuge for lots of us professionals, conservationists coming together. And we know what this issue is caused by. And that's why we're very well equipped to tackle it. And therefore, collaboration is a very important part of securing and protecting dark skies. So the future of dark skies, it will need to also find its place in terms of, reconciling and working with standards, especially horizontal illumination in city context, and also having a design finesse. So Dark Source really tries to actually, hit the bullseye in the center of this. And every project is different. Some of them pull towards standards, some of them pull more with the design, but it's very important. There's always a dark sky ethos implemented in a project. This is a Good Lighting Cumbria 10 that you can Google and find online, which we developed with the Friends of the Lake District. About 14, 15 authorities in and around Cumbria signed up. This is developed for the applicants and also the officers to basically have a checklist and a clear communication of what needs to be done, what shouldn't be done. Question if light is necessary, angle it down, use warm color temperature, shield it, eliminate glare, dim it or switch it off, keep lowered the datum line. And with the new, transparent architecture, it's becoming more of an issue, glowing architecture, just basically have measures to mitigate, interior spill trespassing out to the exterior areas and keep it away from wildlife. And there's a lot of mysticism about dark skies, and actually we try to break that. We try to really make it as simple as possible to understand. So what is bad lighting in residential context? What would be good lighting in the residential project? Bad lighting, commercial lighting, landscape lighting, it's very easy, simplifying, very straightforward, do's and don'ts. And still advocating for design finesse rather than just basically communicating as downlighting to death, if you will. This is one of the projects we've been working on. This is not what we've done, but this is the Newport Lighting Master Plan in the west coast of Ireland, Mayo. It's a town, lovely town suffering from light pollution. It's very legible. There's a lot of light spill. And as part of this site-wide vision, we're working with the community. We identified the St. Patrick's Church up on the hill and the lighting of the Seven Arches Viaduct to be improved foremost, and then looking at the street lighting aspect later down the line. So the project is broken into phases, but having a holistic quality and character whilst doing that, so not compromising on that design vision and ambition. And we produced some visuals to communicate what could be a contender and potential solution worthy of this project. What we've done differently here is working directly with the community, carrying out lots of public consultations, but making them part of the design process, going for testing along with us. Really added significant value to the project because they became a shell and core part of that journey. We were able to mitigate glare, but also kind of improving the daytime image of the church in this context, and improving visibility at night. But also still creating some theatricality and high drama that really celebrates the balance of brightness and darkness. We've created a kind of free circulation area around the church. So shared below, it's not only about the vertical illumination, but also created a bit more horizontal datum line. So taking the periphery of the church into consideration and creating a bit more interactive experiences. This is at the back facade. There's the Henry Clark stained glass, which is only backlit with incidental interior illumination. It's not actively illuminated, but we projected the projection onto the floor so people can appreciate the details on the floor, giving that, you know, kind of feeling that is actually coming from the interior. And that kind of resulted with these happy accidents where people actually enjoyed being actually, being in the light themselves and interacting with the light. So this is what it was before. And this is what we were able to achieve. And something that is very satisfying about, you know, when you remove 2 tons of CO2 with, you know, just basically essentially a reconsideration, retrofitting project, but allowing, you know, this view of the stars to be easily captured on a mobile phone, even without long exposure. It makes this much more real for the average viewer and visitor. This is Plastibrain in Snowdonia. Again, this is a national outdoor center that was suffering from poor illumination with lots of bulkheads everywhere. And we're trying to look at a holistic improvement, how we could actually implement this dark sky ethos, not just as a retrofitting, but also like a regeneration project. So we came out with some concept visuals, creating also some special moments for people, encouraging for them to be out and about. There was a courtyard area which we thought that could, benefit from a bit more higher levels of illumination, just to draw people outside. So, encouraging them to be out and about, and which is very important part of the qualities of life, which we now saw after COVID. And this was what we were able to deliver by integrating lighting wherever architectural detailing that we have and whatever spaces that was offered to us. Utilizing existing bollards, we just replaced the heads, got rid of old transformers, just making it much more lean, and we were able to deliver a holistic vision that is consistent, but it's a pleasant place to be, not just a dark sky reserve or a location. And this is the view. This is basically summarized the project really well. This is 2.5 tons of CO2 reduction between these two images, basically. Within the UK alone, we're spending about £1 billion just wasting light and energy. This is last but not least, Pristine Dark Sky project. This is another situation where lots of towns actually transitioned from sodium to LEDs already, but by doing that, as they saved energy, they also inflicted this light pollution issue on them, where the lights are, in this case, they were 6,500 Kelvin, it's almost blue, and it was very intermittent. Some areas were like so uniform. You could even perform a surgical operation. There was 700 lux under this in this roundabout. So this was not only a story of like we're going in and telling what needs to be done, but also talking with the community, understanding their take on this job, on this project. How do they see themselves? Some of them are interested in dark sky, some of them are interested in the energy efficiency, some of them are interested in the tech, the mobility aspect. And what we find very useful is conducted tests, allowing them to stay there for about 6 months, and then allowed people to come back to us with their comments. And unanimously, large majority opted for the warm LEDs that's been proposed. This is 2,200 Kelvin. And on top of this, I have to highlight, we had only control over the street lighting element here, working with the Powys County Council. We couldn't do or provide any other architectural lighting layer. And on top of that, we've introduced some dimming regimes. 50% of the lighting switched off after midnight. That was a precedent that we were able to retain from the previous lighting that was implemented as an energy saving measure. And then another 50% of the important streets that are accommodating more traffic were able to dim down 50%. And this is the comparison. This blue spike in the LED is causing us the issue. That is, and you can see the differences. After the project, it was seriously mitigated. This is difference between almost 8,000 Kelvin, which is blue, basically, going down to the 2,200 Kelvin range. And we were really delighted with the result. This is 4.5 tons of CO2 reduction, and this is the first dark sky community within Wales. It was a 5 years long collaboration with the local community. Why Wales is important is 20% of Wales is under protected dark skies. There's lots of parks, reserves, and sanctuaries, but this is the first dark sky community. It's a living, breathing town. It's the kind of example that we need in dark skies movement. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kerem. Beautiful work. You have some fantastic before and after comparisons. And I agree that with you that mock-ups, especially ones involving the public, are a really good way to get not only insight, but buy-in. Did you, you mentioned that you invited people, people's comments on the fixtures, the 2200K streetlights in the last project. On the church project where you did mock-ups and got public input, were you able to get any feedback from the stakeholders afterwards, from the public?
That's a good question. Like, for example, the church was very progressive. Obviously, they're using their architecture as a canvas to communicate the dark skies values, and obviously, you know, the suggestion is to go as warm as possible. What we find is often people are never communicated this, and like 9 out of 10, when it's explained, people often react in the way as like, I get it now. 1 out of 10, you will definitely find some challenge and confrontation. But for example, with Pristine, we actually tested 2722, but different optics as well. And kind of what we find really challenging is that all these bad or, you know, very excessive LED, blue LED lighting, or you know, bright and it's not really channeled. What it does is, because LEDs have such a long lamp life, you're completely changing the perception of what lighting is for a generation up until they turn 15 years old or 20, which is crazy. And we all grew up with the you know, orangey amber sodium lights. So then it becomes very difficult to convince why they should come back to the amber lights. That's the particular challenge I find.
That makes sense. I've encountered that too, where warmer lights are associated with sodium vapor in really low color rendering, where you can't tell the difference between, you know, blood and oil on the road in an accident. Did you find any difference between CRI or spectral power distribution as you get warmer? I know the lower color temperatures tend to have less effective color rendering, although I noticed in your slide where you compared the two that the 2200 actually had a better CRI. But does that play into it all? Have you looked at different SPDs?
I think you're very attentive. It gets missed out. Like Travis Longcore has a very good research on that. That actually high CRIs also impacts on biodiversity as well. This is what we're understanding. This is the research that came out about 1.5 to 2 years ago. Now it's becoming another challenge to expect from the manufacturers to give you low CRI, latest LED tech, which is, I think, what we need is options. I think there's no silver bullet when it comes to, because even when we say dark sky friendly, for what? Are we talking about humans? Are we talking about bats? Are we talking about insects? So I think there has to be a bit more nuanced conversation about what the majority stakeholder is. Because obviously we know if it's only for biodiversity, the no lighting is the best lighting you can do. There's definitely going to be a human involvement, but how much activity we're trying to commit it will be an important part. So with Pristine, you'll see that the CRI was kept at 70, and which is getting harder to do that. And we're finding inventing ways, for example, to And like, because exterior lighting is now off the charts, you're getting 95 CRIs, which nobody needs. Our scotopic vision never needed this much light. We never really experienced color, like, you know, and now we have this all full CRI spectrum. And I think more and more what we will require and need is, like, you know, from manufacturers, it's just more affordable, readily available, wide range of options rather than going with single decisions.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. All right, so next we're going to hear from Elettra. Elettra Bordenaro is going to talk to us about light and its and how it's intertwined with social inequity.
Yes. Hi. Hello. Nice to meet you all. I'm gonna share the screen a second, and that's it. I'm very happy to be here today. Thanks for the invite. Thanks, Andrew, to put this together. I'm coming a bit from a different point of view, but also because at Light Follows Behavior, that is the company that we are based in London. We work, I would say, mainly in on urban context. So we don't do pristine skies. We have to deal with all the random bits of a city. And since we started the company in 2012, we decided to work on lighting inequality, because it's true that darkness is a beautiful thing and it's very poetic, but it can be a burden or even a privilege. And I think in London, it can be really considered a privilege. I mean, a privilege that I would like to share with more people. But then we were speaking about light into urban context, in a context that is not, you know, residential, or is not fancy, is not retail, is not like a private development, it's public land. We end up with this situation because we think, oh, wait a second, that place doesn't look very safe. People are complaining. We don't have any money. Let's just put a massive floodlight on the top of the roof. This is Thamesmead, London, okay? I had the culture mediator to go there for 5 nights. Of course, it doesn't look appealing. It doesn't look like dark sky protected at all, okay? It doesn't do anything, okay, except creating like a really bad environment. At the same time, we're fighting, it's like now, what, 13 years, I'm fighting with every council to try to change the policy and the guidelines for light into social housing. Because if you go around London, but UK, but this is, for example, is even in Sweden, in Stockholm, that you think is such a democratic place, okay? Lighting is done for surveillance in a lot of places, particularly on social housing. And they found this a simple and cost-effective solution, a quite brilliant solution, as is stated in the article. Is very brilliant solution to avoid, you know, like antisocial behavior, and to make this place very comfortable. I'm sure that everyone thinks that this place is really comfortable. But not just that, because we are doing social housing, we receive these beautiful catalogs. Now, not anymore, because thanks God, paper, we are a bit more paperless. I receive PDF, okay, speaking about, oh, we have like a like fixture for social housing. This is the range. Okay, what are we talking about here? I mean, did you see the list? So urban regeneration, social housing, local authority, transport, and secure establishment. This, I really like this, the secure establishment. And also we need to think that after dark is not late night, especially when we're in winter. So, I mean, I think it would be nice to start talking about after dark, and there's really nuances about after dark. There's winter darkness that is, you know, 4 p.m., 5 p.m. is dark, 4 p.m. actually, even in Scotland, even before. So what does it mean, darkness? You know, what does it mean in a city context that you can't do anything because the playground is not lit, okay? So we do organize a lot of nights or workshop. Every time we do a project, we do understand the social context. We try to understand if when we are called in a lot of time for safety issue, that's for sure, because that's a bit our, you know, I think our core, and I think we are good at dealing with this. But we try to understand, is it really the problem? Is safety is a really concern? Is a perception of safety? What we can do to mitigate that? And lighting is a factor, but it's not the only factor, as I always mention. You know, like it's not that if you, as Joshua says, not if you put a lot of light, you get a good environment to where to stay. But the problem is that our hands are quite tied. So, for example, here we are on a path in London, central London, Islington, so zone 2. The path is true, is close to a canal. The canal that is just before King's Cross, where they put all the possible lighting ever. But this piece of canal that is probably like 15 meters is where people need to walk to get home. And there was no way to convince to put just a tiny bit of light to make sure that people could actually walk. Then we brought the ecological offers with us on a night walk. And I said, would you go through this space? And she said, no, I'm not walking there. Are you crazy? I was like, yeah, exactly. You see, you got my point. You would not walk there, but people are obliged to go through here if they don't want to go around for other 2 kilometers around the estates. So what we do here? Or this very nice muga, okay, it is like a kind of basketball pitch where the kids are using their torch to light it up. Now, you can imagine that this is it was a complete boy moment, okay? So the boys were angering there. It was like 6 p.m. It was not super late. Can you imagine a girl passing through this space and hearing a voice and just seeing a torch and a lot of like figures and black figure? Is that is not really unsafe, but its perception of safety is not the best. Or this park. This is the most, I mean, it's a beautiful story about this park. This is Barnet. Hi, Barnet. The park was lit. As you can see, we have like some lighting posts there, here and there. But they switch off the lighting after a very bad event. It was a group raping of a girl, of 13 years old girl. So they decided to shut off all the lighting. It's like, I was like, why? Because then people will not feel going there. Okay, what about closing the gate maybe? Oh, no, we leave the gate open because that's your choice and it's a democratic choice to go through the park. Sorry. I mean, like sometimes it's really, I think, completely illogical what I hear. So when you are speaking with, you know, a lot of different of these people at the council, you just think that lighting is an issue, not because of the way the lighting is designed, because we would like to design it better, but it's really, there's a lot of like a kind of like ancestral and primordial like fear or like a take on lighting that are really, I would say, quite insane. And this is a new development, brand new development that we found like doing the night walk, because we were working on another site and we went around for a night walk and we found this, and everyone was like, oh, you see, this is lit properly. I was like, yeah, this is like a spaceship. And you see on the side the amount of spill light that we get from the site. Or, oh, what a good solution to put a lot of bulkheads around, you know, and this poor guy that was there as part of the night walk, but he was very tall, so we use him. And I said, I mean, of course you can't see because you're glared. No one can see your face because you're too much light on your face that we can't even read your face. But if you screen the bulkheads, okay, you see the perception is immediately better. So now why I have to fight every time, because I want not to use bulkheads, and I need to fight. I really need to fight so hard, because there's no products on the market that can substitute a bulkhead in terms of price, in terms of emergency, in terms of like conduit. There's no product on the market that I can use instead of a bulkhead that's required by law. And of course, we all know now that we can't do uplighting to trees. But I was wondering one day, I was walking through London, I was like, what's the difference if I have a street lighting coming through a tree and an uplight to tree? Is that much difference for the animals? I mean, is that much difference for the flora and the fauna? I don't think so. But no one is checking really what is happening to street lighting and trees, because we have a lot of street lighting on trees, really a lot. But if I put in a project, I apply to a tree now, it's not going even through planning because this is not allowed. And I'm not even allowed to do this little nice thing that I found in Sweden, because Sweden is actually, I mean, it's quite dark in comparison to UK. I mean, it's really definitely also the cities is like Denmark. I mean, they are really much darker, but they allow to do maybe something nice that was for the kids to use the playground, because for the kids to use the playground, it means 2 p.m. It means like for 4 months in winter without playground. We are not allowed to do that, but we are allowed to do the Muga floodlights, because in the Sports for England, the requirement for Muga is basically like a lot. The lighting level are crazy. We had 2 meetings with Sports of England to reduce the level there. We are getting there, but it's you know, I'm putting in all the things that is nice to say, oh, we can reduce lighting and we can do beautiful things, but we need to have the chance to do it. And then, of course, I mean, then we work a lot on parks, and there always this mixed feeling about, can we find a balance that makes sense for everyone? Because again, we are working in urban context, so we're not working in a forest. I mean, I love Carême projects, but they're like, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, when we're working outside an urban context as a massive city of 11 million people, I'm fine. But if it's an urban park in urban context, maybe adjacent to highway, why we need to have the kind of same level, you know, of darkness, because people needs to go through those parks. And can I have like 5 women going around like this on a bridge that has no light at all? While, I mean, this is the school on the back. So you see the bridge here, and this is on the back of the bridge, because that's the lighting from the school. Okay, but no one is checking that, public school. Of course, I mean, like I always would like to see not just the street lighting cut off like this, because when we do a cut off like this in parks, I completely avoid to see what is happening on the side, because they are cutting the lighting just on the path. And if there's someone approaching me, going through the park, coming from darkness, I don't have the time to react and to see it. And you will see that here clearly there's a little man down there that I can't see, because it's like it's because of contrast, you know, it's the lack of uniformity. Because this is, for example, it was done very recently, okay, in south of London. I'm not saying any name of the council, so we keep it clear, but this was done very recently because they think it was very unsafe, and they put, like, instead of like a normal column, a 3-head alien lighting. I never saw something like that. And of course, it was creating like probably 100 lights under, and then as soon as you turn around, it's dark again. So this kind of lack of uniformity and contrast is just really detrimental to anything. But as I said, then there's a lot of things that are not lighting, you know, because it's like access and entrances that are not clear, the escape routes that are never clear in terms of wayfinding, or even they don't exist. The maintenance is something not happening, because we normally visit site after dark. Of course we do, because we are lighting designer, but then we discover that half of the fixtures are not working, and they are not working because no one is checking after dark. So they go on site at 2 p.m. and then they say, oh yeah, everything's fine. And then you go there and actually it's not really working. So, I mean, site visits also by, you know, contractor and electrical department should be held probably when it's getting dark. And then what I called, well, landscape as a problem, because sometimes it's impeding natural surveillance. And what I call emotional reaction. So when you have no planning at all, that is always happening on these kind of sites, and they just get scared and they think, oh, this is really unsafe, something happened there, we need to add lighting. So what they do is they add 1 light more with no planning, and then it's just, you know, like it's just creating more contrast, more glare, and you know, how to find the balance. I'm not sure. This is a project we did in a social housing. I think it's the first social housing estate ever done with the residential kind of aesthetics. I'm really proud. We kind of went through all the possible legal action to do it, but we went through it because we had a nice client. But we found it even more difficult now, I have to say, to find the right balance. And definitely, you know, it's the problem is that sometimes a lot of these locations are just like a copy and paste solution. And it's not the case. I mean, the emotional reaction, as I say, to violence and crime is never the correct answer. We need someone, we need people to do analysis after dark, not just designer, but everyone involved in the process. And we need definitely a good understanding of the social context and good planning and design. And as I always say, lighting is not a tool that can provide safety, but is definitely a good tool to support social life in a public space. And if we have social life in public space, we activate the space, and the space feels naturally more safer. And I think I've done it. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Aletra. I think that what you bring up is one of the things I noticed that you brought up is that perception of safety can vary a lot by who you are, and that should be taken into account. I love that you're also doing public walks, and agree that far too few people who are making decisions about lighting are actually outside experience lighting, including sometimes the electricians who are responsible for installing it. You mentioned that you often have to fight against using bulkheads, which we'd call wall packs in the US. Have you been successful in those fights? And if so, how? Like, what works?
So we have been successful once in Shadwell, because we, the one I showed, because well, we went against the regulation. I will not say which one. I will not say which regulation we kind of. The second time we have been successful in Portsmouth, incredibly, on a social housing estate in Portsmouth, but they've been like the worst project I ever worked on. Like, and we manage. The lighting is there, it's not bulkheads, but everything else is such like a pain, and I mean, it doesn't make any sense in the total context, because we start with the person, and that's also the problem. Sometimes it's really come to that one person in the council that taking the decision. And I think that should change. I think we need a more democratic approach to that. It can be one person that is saying what you can do and what you can't do. So the one person at the beginning was very open, and they say, let's experiment something different. Then this guy made his own career and went off, and we were left with two other people. They were completely ignoring what we were trying to do. And the problem is, I think, is the budget. Is not only the budget. I think the main problem is the fact that bulkheads like this in social housing, they need to be packed with the emergency battery on board, integral to each fixture. You can't have a battery pack on remotely. No, it needs to be integral to one fixture. That also is like, is it really necessary? I mean, regulation. And another point is that, of course, because the bulkhead is spreading and is diffusing the light all over, you need less light point to light up everything, right? Because it's spreading so much around it. So it's also true that, I mean, 10 years ago, I was going around asking to all manufacturers, can we have like some light and fixture that can warm dim in the public space? And they say, oh, well, who need that? Now I have them because of the bats. So I'm very happy. I can use the bats lighting for human. Is it possible that due to the bats and the flora and the fauna, maybe I can also find a solution for the bulkheads? How that interesting, right?
Right. Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you. Next, we've got Professor Nick Dunn, who's going to talk to us about how dark and darkening of cities can be another way of thinking about outdoor lighting design.
Thanks, Joshua, and thank you, obviously, for all the brilliant presentations from yourself and Karem and Aletra, and also Andrew and the Harold, the Happold Foundation, for the invitation to join you today. So we've heard a lot already, and I'm very mindful of us having a good time for some questions and answers with the people that are also gathered with us. So I'm going to keep this fairly brief. What you can see here and what I've been working on over the last sort of decade or so is really thinking about how we might reimagine and perhaps reconfigure our urban environments after dark. And this is just a shot of a place, one of my favorite places after dark in Manchester, which is my home city. I like it simply because when I go there and when I take other people there, the lighting is fairly soft. You get other elements of nature, sort of nocturnal nature, so you can't really see them very well in this image, but there's Canada geese there, there's pipistrelle bats, there was actually a fox walking past, and I should say, in the interests of openness and honesty, there were 2 security guards who were about to ask me what I was doing. So, you know, let's be honest about what it's like to be out at night. But why darkening cities? I mean, I think one of the issues generally for us is when we don't have light in cities, it's normally because there's a problem. We suspect something has gone wrong. And so there's our relationship with it is often emotional. Our whole relationship with light and dark, as we know, right the way back from the very origins of our species, light was really important, and darkness was alloyed with things that were dangerous, problematic, and then with organized religion and of course the Enlightenment project, you have a moralizing tone of darkness being a regressive thing. There's lots of good reasons why we have light in our lives, but as has already been said, we simply have too much. And so I'm not a lighting designer. I think that's probably quite obvious already from what I've said. But I trained as an architect and I'm an urbanist, and I'm particularly interested in how we can really start to think differently about our urban environments. I understand the need for conserving and preserving dark sky places, and I think there are some wonderful schemes we've already seen in this discussion today that are addressing that and designing sophisticated things to respond to that. But as Elettra set out, and indeed Joshua earlier, you know, when you come to urban environments, it's complicated. I mean, the relationship of light, particularly electric light, has demarcated different values over time. I mean, if we were to go back, you know, about 100 years or so, light would have been in the wealthy neighborhoods, and urban darkness demarcated the poorer neighborhoods. You know, that was definitely, they didn't have the infrastructures, they didn't have the access. But now, as we've just heard from the previous presentation, that's kind of switching. Light's being used as a social determinant. It's blazing on social housing projects, and darkness is becoming a luxury. You know, if we look at some of the more affluent neighborhoods, they don't necessarily have high levels of light, but this varies across so different cities and different contexts. So the reason I set up the Dark Design Lab at Lancaster University was to really see if we could change the narrative as to how we accept darkness and work with it. And this photo that you can see, this was taken about 11 years ago. This again, it's just a shot in Manchester. And what we can see here is some classic sodium bulbs, Manchester Cathedral in the background, just over the river. And that view doesn't exist anymore because at about the same time, coincidentally, Manchester City Council announced its intention to replace all its sodium bulbs with 56,000 LEDs. And most of those were first generation white blue LEDs. So over a process of months and years, which somewhat slowed down by COVID towards the end, this city, my city, and of course many other cities around the world, profoundly changed its sort of atmospheres, its ambiences. And I've been documenting this. So I have an archive of Manchester and the metropolitan region, sort of maps that I've made, thousands of photographs, drawings, sketches, annotations, because I've been out for hours and hours throughout the last sort of decade or so, studying this and seeing what's changed. But when I talk to people, they say, darkness, that's interesting. Okay. What about light pollution? What's the problem? And I think this here is the issue that I am sure that everybody else on this call is tackling, light pollution. It's not, people don't deliberately put excessive lighting in things. But when we talk to people about it, when we try and capture the public imagination, some of the scientific evidence doesn't help. When we say that light pollution has gone up 270%, what does that really mean? And yet, if we turn the tap on in our kitchen, brown water comes out the faucet, most of us aren't going to drink it. We smell gas walking down the street. We're sort of, quite reasonably alarmed and think maybe we, ought to contact the authorities if there's not someone walking. But light pollution's a much sneakier prospect because we also welcome it into our lives. So the whole basis of the work we're doing is to have better relationships with darkness at night, to think about how that might be in urban environments. And that's really difficult because when we think about cities, the common perception is something like this. I realize this is taken to the extreme, Hong Kong, perhaps the brightest city in the world. But we expect them to be vibrant, brightly lit places. We don't expect to encounter darkness there. But I wonder if there might be a better vision for how we anticipate our cities to be. And I'm not suggesting it's this. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, are familiar with this project, this photography project by Thierry Kuhn. So for those of you that maybe haven't seen this, he photographs cities around the world. He then is obviously using software to effectively take out all the lights, and he's coupling these cityscape images with a photograph which is taken at a similar latitude but with greater atmospheric clarity. So essentially, if you were to turn all the lights off in Hong Kong, say in this example, this might be something that you might see. Now, I don't think that we want this, and I think that this project is interesting because it kind of demonstrates to us our maybe intractable relationship, our reliance with artificial lighting and illumination. But when you talk about a vision for future cities after dark, it's mine that actually we should be able to see more stars and, some of the Milky Way possibly in parts of urban areas. I was struck, particularly in COVID, when there was a lot of emphasis about accessing green spaces and blue spaces for health and well-being. And yet, as Electra pointed out, many of us are in darkness earlier in the morning and later in the afternoon at certain types of year with the seasonality. And there's no reason why people can't go and enjoy places safely. It's never been about more light, as the introduction of this session said. It's about better lighting and how can we do that. Light makes us feel safe, but the relationship with it doesn't prove or ensure security, and we need other measures to kind of tackle that. So, as in the beginning, of course, there was darkness, and these are some of the things I've been doing. The only reason I wanted to show this really today was that the Dark Skies book is open access. So if there's anyone in this panel discussion that'd like to look at that whole book is downloadable and available to look at. And there's some really interesting contributions, including a great chapter by Karem, who's also in this session today. And then, as it just so happens, my new book, it's not a plug, but I want to use it to explain what I'm talking about, is out today, Dark Futures. And that's because I think we need better stories, better narratives as to how to deal with this fundamental issue of people's relationship of light and dark. Most of us don't realize that we need a healthy relationship. People aren't aware of the human health implications. They don't appreciate that climate change is happening faster at night and some of the effects we're having on plants, animals, amphibians, insects, mammals, birds, through excessive lighting, a lot of which is completely avoidable. We just don't appreciate that. So that book is a part memoir. It describes my evolving relationship with the dark, but then it tackles three things. It talks about ideologies. So it talks about ways we've thought about darkness. And there are long-standing philosophical traditions, both in Eastern philosophy and in the West, would you believe, that talk about darkness positively, but we've kind of erased that because it doesn't suit our narrative. Then it talks about ecologies and how us, as people that have become increasingly detached from the planet, need to be reconnected with it. And I think having a healthy relationship with light and dark is one way to do that. And then it talks about the technologies and how we might actually think about darkening cities to make them safer, to avoid that glare, to allow our night perception to be in balance with some of the lighting qualities that we have, whereas we saw from the example earlier with the glare that it's not, someone can be behind that LED lighting, etc. So we lead collective night walks. We find new ways of visualizing environmental data to bring people in the conversation, because otherwise the kind of consumer options are very challenging for us. We go in a hardware store, we know we can buy more light in a bulb, so it seems, for the same price. So why wouldn't we do that? And I think, I hope that what we're doing here is complementary to many of the perspectives we've already heard, because we're working with different bodies and communities to help them understand the positive benefits of having a good relationship with light and dark, rather than just defaulting and leaning into more and more light without really realizing the issues that it causes. So we've got the means. I mean, all the presenters so far have described, different ways that we can tackle some of these issues. But I think, I truly believe that if our future urban environments are going to be equitable, inclusive, convivial, and sustainable, then we're going to have the mindset. We've got to have the mindset, and I'm not sure we've quite got there yet. So I'm going to pause there so we can get into some questions from the audience. I'm sure they'll be keen to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I had a question for you. Actually, I agree that a lot of people don't appreciate the impact of light on humans and other species, as we've all been talking about today. In addition to your books, which I'm very interested to read now, what do you see as ways we, as the community who care about this, I assume anybody that joined an hour and a half webinar about dark skies is interested in this. What can we do to help spread this message, in your view?
So I think there's a number of things. I mean, obviously you've big organizations like Dark Sky, and getting involved with your local chapter. And I was brought in as to be one of the directors for Dark Sky UK because of my background, because I'm coming at it from an urban angle rather than maybe, preserving dark sky places, to try and bring communities that normally wouldn't access these kind of things. So I think it's about the stories we tell. I think it's about showing people, illustrating people with people what they can do about it. So, referring people to good lighting guides, explaining, demonstrating. I mean, cities are ideal laboratories. We always hear about living labs, different cities, different towns being used in different ways. And we can point to some good examples of, darker sky places. But I think we're missing an opportunity because we don't experiment very much, actually. And I'm not talking about playing with people's lives here. I'm talking about explaining and showing people what I have learned. If I've learned anything over the last decade or so of doing this, it's about making it relatable. And I think we're at a really important moment for this discussion, because here in the UK, a couple of years ago, the whole idea of the 15-minute city, which is finding traction pretty much everywhere else in the world in terms of, sustainable, resilient neighborhoods, was handled disastrously by a few politicians. And so there's huge pushback to it. And I can completely understand that if I were to appear in certain channels or whatever and start talking about darkening the cities, people think that I may have some kind of problem. We're going to be like 19th century Paris, smashing lanterns and casting everybody back into primitive darkness. I think the answer to your question, Joshua, is for people to understand that moving through light and having a balanced relationship and coexistence with darkness is the progress we're looking for in an era of climate emergency, rather than just adding more and more light. So it's an and both approach. It's not an either or. There's the work that's happening professionally, which we've heard from already in this session. There's helping people understand that they have a stake in it and what to do. So I work with some people that have issues with maybe neighbors' gardens, floodlights, new developments, explaining what they can do about that, how to complain about it. Also encouraging people to go out and experience different atmospheres, ambiences at night, and understand that can be a really pleasurable thing, and it can be done safely and people can feel secure. And also having open discussions like this one about what people see the problems are. And I'm very aware of some of the issues, and how male violence in particular characterizes a lot of what is considered, emotional and knee-jerk reactions to artificial light at night. So I think it's all the things that are happening now in the industry and more, but it's also about how we can mainstream some of this stuff so that people realize it affects, they're just not aware of the health issues that having too much light at night can happen, particularly on shift workers and even people working into the evening.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, thank you for that. Andrew, should we go into the questions in the chat, do you suppose? What do you
Yeah,
recommend?
let's do that. I've put a couple of questions in, so if I may chip in with a couple of things that I was concerning me. What the world of we've sort of concentrated on people walking in towns and cities, but the world of transport seems to be very overwhelming in a lot of the lighting that it asks for, and even I was unaware that Vancouver, Lorraine, I think, is from Vancouver, so had banned this trial blackout day, which I suggested would be quite interesting to try out, because of aircraft. I don't know what they needed, but most transport in the future might be fly-by-wire, autonomous vehicles, not need light to see your way around. So that was really my question about how you future-proof cities. And I've had an interesting conversation about dimmers already. Build in some way of dimming something. So there's a few thoughts from myself, and perhaps some of the panelists would like to comment. And I also noticed Rupert. I don't know, Rupert, you might want to throw something in at the same time.
Or shall I wait for them to address yours, Andrew? Because you said a few things there, and
I can say something to that if it's helpful. Lampposts have had lots of different functions, but particularly the idea of lights on top of poles to help vehicles not hit each other and people move around safely was a primary function throughout the 20th century. I'd question whether we need lighting quite like that anymore in our towns and cities. I think you could get rid of them.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure lampposts are fit for purpose in the way that they were. They're a kind of 18th century technology. Maybe it's time to think about something different.
I think the public participation can be sought in the sense of we have technologies that allow people to dim things up and down. We have movement sensors. We have, we all have this. We're constantly connected. Why not, make better use of this device? We have technologies that are mostly accepted in maybe interior lighting. When it comes to exterior, everything has to be bomb-proof, and everything has to be just like that excessive requirements that Electra has mentioned, and that emergency kit in every single bulkhead. So we have really tough expectations when it comes to how the light should perform, particularly in the UK, I think, where there's a health and safety criteria that, you know, kind of culls down creativity and innovation from the starting point. I think there are lots of technologies that, as Nick was saying nicely, that the city is your laboratory. Like, you know, there could be really nice experiments can be carried out with these techs. And whenever this project is small enough, like community driven, it gives that opportunity to do that. Whenever it becomes wider and public thoroughfare and public responsibility comes into play, we all go, oh, standards, you know, therefore columns, etc.
Yeah, I just add one thing. I think lighting standards and lighting guidelines, sometimes, I mean, we should be really careful because, well, I mean, if we do lighting guidelines for lighting designer or people that can understand what is exactly explained, it's okay. But sometimes we also have to take the guidelines and say, well, is written this and this. It doesn't actually say that, you know, like, for example, one of the council wanted us to do all red lighting in social housing zone 2 London. That was a bit extreme. I mean, bollards now are strongly discouraged by the new ILP guidelines. So I said, well, I mean, I can't use column there. I can't use bollard. What's his left? You know, like it's what I think we need to be careful with that. In terms of like future, I think our lighting in cities, and that's what I want also to address with the presentation. I mean, there's many places where we can cut lighting off, and streets are definitely one of the points. I mean, like, who needs car-centric lighting, let's say? You know, like, we are lighting a lot of space for cars, and then we try to minimize as much as possible the space for people or pedestrian spaces. And I think that's the balance I think we need to find, because we can make our cities really dark if we want, but still have like a lot of sociable and livable space.
I'm curious, I just wanted to follow up on that. Elettra, you mentioned that bollards are strongly discouraged. I haven't encountered that here in the US. What's the reason?
I tried to ask the same question. Thanks for asking. They said that the answer was quite astonishing to say. I was like, oh, because probably we were referring to like bad quality lighting bollards. I say, well, you know, you have bollards that are not doing any up lighting because you can shield the bollards. I mean, they're really nice bollards now. It was not for a vandalism issue that I thought at the beginning, because it was related to the bats lighting and the guideline for bats and flora and fauna. I think it's because they were referring to bollards that were like spreading light all over, but then you need to explain exactly what you mean by that bollard, because if not, then when I go to the council with the guidelines, they say, oh, no, sorry, you can't use bollard. Bollards are strongly discouraged. And then you need to go into call the guidelines guy and ask the question and, you know, like trying to, and I say, can you amend? And they say, no, we can't amend it. Okay, fine.
All right, fun. All right, Rupert, do you want to jump in?
Oh, thanks, Joshua. Well, it's all very interesting. Thank you. Most of the lighting that was covered today was either white or warmer, yellowy, orange light. Elettra just mentioned red lights, but my question's about what the impact of other colours would be on people's behaviour and sense of well-being in the urban environment. I was thinking of the idea of playing classical music in train stations, which calms people, makes them feel safer. In restaurants, I understand sometimes red walls are there to make people feel more comfortable and stay longer. So I was wondering, is there anything you can say about the psychology of different colours, the impact on people's state of mind and behaviour in the urban environment? And sometimes it might be just simply a pleasant place to be. Certain landmarks can be lit up in colours, and that could draw people to different areas of the urban environment potentially.
Yes, I think it's maybe a question more for Nick and Kerem. By the way, if someone is then interested in color rendering and shifting in color temperature and color rendering correlated, we did a study. So I have the measurement for that specific case, but I can drop the images in the chat.
Thank you.
I think it's a brilliant suggestion, Rupert. I think the issue has been with the regulations and lighting standards. No, to my knowledge, most places will not entertain these kind of interventions on the long term. So, but our relationship with light, particularly colored light, is really profound. And you know, that kind of redistribution of darkness and kind of re-enchantment with places after dark is something you could really achieve with fairly low level but different colored lights that would start to give, you know, city areas different kind of qualities, different kind of connections. I mean, some colors in different contexts will play out very differently, of course, but I think that kind of, we've all seen how popular and sometimes controversial light festivals are, but you know, that playfulness, I mean, artificial light at night is capable of so much more, and yet somehow, as Kerem says, you know, as soon as we get to cities, you know, and it's somehow it's got to be serious, and we take all the fun stuff out and the playfulness, and some of those lower level lights, embedded lights, different gradations, sensors. I mean, we've so much more at our disposal. I think it's really having the mindset to test these things and see what they do. But I think it would be very, very effective, actually, very powerful, and would make people feel more secure. Perhaps quite a lot of you, I'm sure, have seen those studies about the differences of where men look through dark spaces when there's a light source, and where women look, you know, and the men look to the light source and the women look generally all around it because it's in the darkness they perceive. Thinking about the different gradations of light, avoiding glare, and having that sort of those elements that encourage people to stay around, you know, in a positive way, because that's what makes people feel more safe, rather than just trying to run through it because it's terrifying.
It's not just transient.
So, but I'm sure Kerem will probably add some things too.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks. I agree. Look, I mean, one of the things I miss a lot because I went too far into the dark side, maybe, is color. Because you know, as you said, it's a great placemaking and wayfinding device, a tool, a layer, like, you know, unfortunately, like, I can't really experiment with vertical illumination as much as I'd like to, but I definitely think that it's actually definitely creates an ambiance and evokes different emotions from people. There are lots of studies done, like wine tasting under being immersed in different colors. People even, you know, suggest that the food tastes different. I think the only challenge that I have with color is, like, you know, apart from, you know, if it's done in an exposed outdoor area, if it's blue, what happened now, like after a while, us lighting designers got a bit lazy, and then we said it's RGB and white, and so it can produce all pastel-y nice colors and transitions. What happens is, after we leave the project, even if you've given it like a clear control regime, like, you know, intent, it's in an RGB white loop of doom, and I think there's a danger with there's a lack of imagination that comes with capability. And I think I want to just basically dial back and say, like, this is how we want it to be experienced, and this is what we're going to deliver. Even in the Dark Skies projects, it comes often so many times that, like, you know, can we have, you know, warm or red at night for the bats, you know, in that spectrum, and then maybe it goes to 3000 Kelvin earlier, link and stuff. The thing is, as soon as I do that, I will never be able to monitor what you guys are doing with it. So, like, you know, the designer's role is to basically prescribe how you're going to use that. So that's my only, you know, issue with color, that it needs to be tailored. You know, it needs to be very well cut, made to that space.
Yeah. Thank you,
I very much agree with that in my work. I've been fortunate enough to work on a lot of really creative color tuning projects, and I've run into the same thing as Kerem, that if you give the client all the control they want, it'll just be a scrolling rainbow, or they'll turn it, sometimes you need to be able to let them change it the color of the sponsor because they're going to make a lot of money off of that. But what I found the most successful approach is to have a control system that defaults to carefully curated programs, presets that they have to manually override each time. And then it goes back to a default. And those presets, personally, I like to base them on images of nature, photographs of sunrise and sunset from the location where the project is, and maybe inspired by the state flower or plants that are used in the park itself. And even though very rarely anybody looking at it would think, oh, that looks like a flower, you still know that there's, I think people can perceive that there's something behind that more than just I pressed somewhere on the color dial on the control system, and this is the color that came up. So I totally agree that curated is important. And Rupert, really interesting question, because I think for a lot of especially in this space, in terms of making better and more responsible outdoor lighting choices, we're mostly only looking at what different wavelengths of visual light do, how they impact humans and other species. What does light in the blue spectrum do? What does light in the warm spectrum do? And then how can we use that? But you're right that ignores a whole layer of psychological impacts that lighting can have.
Thanks, Josh.
There were actually a couple comments about driving in roadways right at the beginning. Rachel asked, interesting, same issue of glare occurs with car headlights and makes it more difficult to see pedestrians, cyclists, etc. Do car designers use the same principles? I think related to glare. I don't think they do, and I wish they would. I don't know if the rest of the panel has any insight. I guess we're all in agreement.
Joshua, we sadly are running out of time, so through you, I'd suggest we get a final quick comment from all the panel. It's very sad to have to say goodbye to everybody, but anyway, that would be my suggestion, yourself included.
Great. I would just leave with we should work towards having not more light, but better light. Karen, any final thoughts?
It's a bit cheesy, but I still love it, and I'll still say it. It's about having the right light at the right time at the right place. And there are occasions where light is not the layer that you need. I think we still have to have that very, very first question. Is light needed? If yes, how much of it's needed and what quality is required? I think we just need to default back to that, important parameters.
Alitra?
Yes, I agree with Karam as well. I think that particularly, I think Dark Sky Association should help designer to find the real problems and focus on what is what is in our city are the problem. And I don't think the problem is the uplight to the tree here and there. I think the problem is the massive social housing, massive billboard, massive industrial sites. There's a lot, cars, street lighting for cars. That's all can go, all of that can go. But we need to, we need to evolve from the poetic of, oh, we need to switch off that lighting here and there. We need to go strong on that, I think.
Nick?
Just really echoing what's already been said, but I think we need to make sure it's our communities and our stars that stay brilliant rather than our urban places.
Nice. All right. Andrew, do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody on the panel and yourself, Joshua, for because it's the middle of the day, so we can all put our feet up, but you've now got to refocus. So really grateful for your contributions. If I was to say it's been brilliant and enlightening, that would be a bit of an over punning for the end of the day, but it truthfully has. I've learned so much because I'm really looking at it as a lighting user. And it's been a really fantastic experience, and I've thoroughly enjoyed working with you all. Well, hope to see you all in the audience again for our next event, which will be at the end of April. Sorry, getting my months right. But for the time being, thank you to the panel. And if you want to review this, it'll obviously be online at the Hapoel Foundation website. And do encourage others to see it, because I think it's a very important topic to get your head around and start thinking about more.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you all. Take care.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.